Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. It's now 7 o'clock and we are going to open our Selectmen's meeting in accordance with Governor Baker, March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law 30A-20. The open session portion of this meeting will be held remotely in an online conference mode hosted on zoom.com, and members of the public will not be able to physically attend. The meeting will be broadcasted live on Comcast Channel 12. It can also be viewed via live stream at WHCA TV and will subsequently be broadcasted on youtube.com. That being said, Eric, did you know that just our town label is on the screen? I don't know if you want to change that.
What I'm seeing on the web stream is Brady Bunch Hollywood Squares. So
okay, all right. No, I just had it wide open. All right. That being said, could we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to
the flag
of the United States of America and to the
republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I want to thank Brian for the flag that's in the background. And as customary, can we please have a moment of silence and remember all that are ill with the COVID-19? Thank you. I need a motion to approval of bill and payroll warrants. Do I hear a motion?
So moved, Carl.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Randy. Any conversation on it? Any questions? Seeing none. We'll go around the board. Justin?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. We need a motion to, did it come back or something? Somebody have a question? No, I guess not. Okay, I need a motion to accept correspondence in the read file. Do I hear a motion?
So moved, Carl.
Is there a second? Thank you, Randy. Any discussion? Seeing none. Around the board, Justin,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
and Dan, I'll vote yes. I need a motion to approve the meeting minutes of open session February 9th, 2021.
So moved, Carl.
Thank you, Carl. Second?
Second, Randy.
Second by Randy. Any discussion on that? Seeing none. Justin,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Okay, next on the agenda is town administrators report, COVID-19 update. Lincoln, you're on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So I just like to obviously focus on COVID-19 as there is another item not directly related to COVID-19 in the report. But just want to give the board a quick update in particular of some of the events in the last week. The board saw, and I know, it's certainly been in the news, the communication last week from the State Executive Office for Health and Human Services that the state is making the decision to not use the municipalities as distribution sites going forward, especially after March 1st for vaccines, but instead focus on the larger sites in our area, Gillette Stadium and the Marshfield Fairgrounds. Certainly that's disappointing, particularly since Whitman, like every municipality in Massachusetts, has put together and has worked, for many years on an effective vaccination plan, and we certainly had that in place. Nevertheless, we certainly want to continue and to pursue the goal that we all have, which is forging ahead and making sure that the town's doing its part to get the maximum number of vaccine doses into the arms of residents who are interested in being vaccinated. And who are eligible because of age and their risk factors. So to that end, within the last week, all first responders for the town of Whitman who were interested in, expressed a desire in being vaccinated. All police and fire personnel were fully vaccinated with their second dosage last week. So that's certainly great news in protecting our first responders. In addition, early this week, yesterday actually, after 2 weeks in a row of requesting vaccine shipments from the state and being denied, the town did receive a small shipment really focused on second doses. And so that small shipment will allow later this week for the town and for the fire department folks to vaccinate and have a second vaccination for people, for residents who had already received a first vaccination from the town. So that's certainly good news that we did receive some vaccine after not receiving it for 2 weeks. The other two major things that that Danielle Cleary, who's working in particular on the COVID issues, and the Board of Health and the fire department are working on, is a hotline so that those who are homebound, who are eligible to receive the vaccine because of age, in particular, over 65, and truly because of a physical disability, are homebound, they can contact this number, 781-618-9778. That's the COVID hotline to get assistance with doing the town with the small remaining doses that we received from the state this week. The fire department's planning on doing a small mobile clinic, vaccination clinic for those folks who are truly homebound and can't get to the mass vaccination sites. So, certainly we want to get that word out that we're putting that program together, and there will be a reverse 911 call later this week to those folks, particularly seniors who are eligible, so that the word is further out that this program, we're looking to pursue this program with the few vaccine doses that we did get. So that's the various work that's been going on amongst a lot of players, a lot of hardworking folks in town. The good news is that amongst all that hard work, the good news also is that our incident rate is going down. So in the 2 weeks prior to February 18th, the average daily incidence per 100,000 people in Whitman was 30.8, and the percent positivity of those being tested was 5.33%. So we are still in the red with those numbers on the color-coded system, but certainly down from the previous week. So for example, the previous week in the 2 weeks before February 11th, compared with that 30.8 and 5.33% positivity, it was 42.3 per 100,000 and 6.89% positivity. And that's all, down from the peak. In retrospect now, it seems as the peak for the second wave in Whitman was hitting at the end of the year when we were at a much higher rate, 62.5% incidence per 100,000 and 10.58% positivity. So that's all good news. That is dropping, that we are still in the red, but certainly in the lower portion of the red. And that actually is a segue into the next item. Well, why don't I stop there, and if folks have any questions about that.
Does anybody have any questions of Lincoln, please? No questions? I guess that does segue into our next topic on the agenda that you and I have been discussing for the last 3 or 4 days. Possibly discussing a timeline on reopening town buildings and which building we would consider reopening at this time. So you want to take it from there, Lincoln, what we talked about?
Sure. Yeah. So I did get a chance. The Board of Health met this morning, and I'm happy to I had a chance to meet with them to get their input, from the public health professionals, from the board and from the public health professionals about what they recommend with reopening. What they had, what the discussion and the consensus amongst the Board of Health members was that they would recommend that the town be 3 weeks in the green level. And then that would be the appropriate time to consider reopening. Just as a quick reminder, I know I had to remind myself what the color codes mean. So again, we have been in the red. We're in the lower part of the red, but we have been in the red in Whitman for a while. The red means for a community of our size, greater than 10 average cases per 100,000. Again, compare that with the 30.8 that we're now at, and a greater than 5% positivity rate. So we're just above that now. Hopefully we'll be in the yellow next week, knock on wood. What green means, two levels below, is for a municipality, community of our size, is less than 10 average cases per 100,000 and greater than 10 total cases. So we'd still have a little bit of a ways to go to get to the green, from that 30.8 to less than 10. But we certainly have been on the right trajectory. So, it's obviously hard to say when we might get to that green, but that was the consensus from the Board of Health for 3 weeks in the green.
Okay, I'll add my 2 cents. My concerns, I mean, I've had people come up to me asking me when we're going to open town hall. That's what they're looking at to pay their bills and things like that. Not everybody can pay online. Not all can have checkbooks. Like last week when I was coming out of town hall, an elderly lady wanted to pay her excise bill. She pays in cash. She couldn't get in the building. I went up and got the assistant treasurer collector. She came out. We met the woman outside, got the money, and the bill was taken care of. That being said, I'm saying to myself, well, if that's the case, there's not everybody makes out checks and puts them in the drop box that we have outside or pays online. We have to have some face-to-face communication. And looking at all the town buildings, I look at town hall and I see that all the offices have shields, and the employees are protected behind those shields. Same with the DPW office. I've seen that. I have not been in the library or the senior center, so I do not know the circumstances there. But I do have concerns about the senior center and library, where people sit around tables and they will communicate with each other, or any function, or whether they have a meal or they're sitting there in a book club at the library or whatever. And I know that I talked to a superintendent of schools at South Shore Tech and asked them, what do they do when kids are in school? And what they do is kids sit at a desk, whether it's the desk all day in the classroom or in the lunchroom, and they have wipes that they clean the desk off before they leave it. And then, of course, at night, the crew comes in and they spray the building down. But that's one way of doing it. So my concerns is, if we ever consider opening up the town buildings, which I would like to, we would need to talk to the department heads, and they would have to take some type of action to make sure that their building is taken care of during the day. And of course, we could have Todd go and spray the buildings down at night with the machine that we have. But as far as on a daily presentation, it's like when you go to a restaurant, when you leave the restaurant, when you leave your table, the waitress comes over and cleans it all and wipes it down for the next person. Well, that's going to have to happen in our senior center and library if they want the building open. That's the concerns that I have. If they don't want to do that, then they don't open, in my eyes. But I do think that town hall can open. I do think the DPW can open. Police station and fire station, they're open anyway. I mean, they're security. They need to be taken care of. But those are just my concerns. I don't know if anybody else has an input on it. Thinking about it. Yeah, Brian.
I was doing some driving today and I had to the radio news on, and I had heard a report about the state considering reopening the schools somewhere around early April. And I don't know how much progress or what they have to vote, or they're looking for an exemption or whatever, but statewide. And by what Lincoln mentioned with the numbers and getting to green, I think that might be a good target for us when the schools are going to possibly open up. That might get us to that, through that time frame, to that green area that we need to be in anyways, so it could all tie in together, in the town in general getting somewhat up to speed. So I wouldn't want to put a hard date on it, but my suggestion would be that maybe we could look to that time frame for a reopen.
I also think that we can look at other towns and see exactly what they are doing and how they're coming across. Who else? Who had their hand up? Kyle?
I did.
Okay. You'll be next, Randy.
You know, the fact that we're still in the red would make me really pause about getting too excited about opening the town buildings. When we have been pretty good at listening to the Board of Health and where they get their information from. And when they talk about 3 weeks of green, if that coincides with what Brian is talking about, that will be fine. But it would seem to me
Yeah.
like we do need to side on the take the side of safety, and 3 weeks of green makes some sense to me. But I fully sympathize with Dan's story about the woman who came with cash. However, we've been pretty good about following the Board of Health, and I think we should continue to do so.
Oh, I agree with that. I mean, I think it's on their knowledge when we should be opening the town buildings. Just as something for knowledge. Yeah, Randy.
Yeah, just to echo basically what Dan and Brian just said. I think that is something to shoot for. If we're going by some basic guidelines where we actually say, okay, 3 weeks in the green, that also is kind of a good way for the community to realize, look, this is when we can kind of expect our town buildings to open back up, and whatever sense of normalcy follows with that. Which also, I guess, would ease a little bit of pressure on us from the constant, when are you going to open? How come they're not open? Look, when we're in the green, 3 weeks, this is when we're going to, put our plan into effect of opening things back up. To piggyback off of that, and Lincoln and I slightly touched on this when we spoke, I do think that we're getting to the time period where that plan of reopening, probably is around the corner. Might be a long bend more than a quick corner, but we're getting there. And I think this, like you were saying, Dan, like some places have screens. Are we sure we have all those screens in place? Do we have wipes? Is this something, Lincoln, that you think that you're going to be addressing over the next couple of weeks to make sure when it is time to open, it's done in the safest manner possible?
Well, thank you for bringing that up, Selectman Lemontina and the rest. So I would say that I do think there's a few other things that need to happen in town hall. So I would say if the consensus of the board, and that's what I'm hearing, is 3 weeks in the green, the board could take a vote on that, or take a vote later on it, or if that's just the consensus, I'll follow that. And with that in mind, as what I'll make sure of is that within those 3 weeks, particularly at town hall, we'll make sure that that the screening is in place in such a way to make sure that that those barriers are up. We do have some CARES Act monies from Plymouth County remaining, that that would certainly be an appropriate use of those funds. So with the board's explicit or implicit consent, from what I'm hearing is we'll plan on 3 weeks in the green, being open at town hall at that point, and making sure that at that point these appropriate barriers are up. I think that the further conversation is about the library and the COA in particular. And, I guess to a lesser extent, the DPW building. But, I don't know if that's something the board wants to provide some more input on, or, if we would just want to focus on town hall and put off an opening decision or metrics to make a decision on opening for those other 3 buildings. So.
Yes, Justin.
I just wanted to jump in. I got 2 quick things. So first, I think Carl put it well. We've been following the advice of the Board of Health, the public health experts, including the our emergency management director, which is our fire chief.
Yeah.
All along, I don't see a reason to stop now as things are starting to get better. But also, I had a question for Lincoln. Just because Whitman is such a small community, we spent a few weeks as a gray town, meaning that we would have been green, but there's not enough data to statistically say we're green. Would you just run that by our public health experts and say, do you consider gray to be green?
Sure. Yeah. Will do. Yep. We'll get an answer on that. I think just a couple other things. I did also speak with Chief Greno, and he agreed that 3 weeks in the green makes sense to him as well. I have heard some concerns from residents about town hall not being open, but it's helpful to get some guidance on where we want to go and following the public health experts. The one other thing that I intend, unless there's objection, what I would intend to reinforce is that I do think we can certainly have a liberal interpretation of what a by appointment only means at town hall. And so this is already pretty much happening in most offices, but to sort of formalize the process of having very clear, telephone numbers for each department at town hall on every door at town hall, and hopefully having an employee in each office who's willing to go to the door when somebody gives a call on their cell phone and do that quick transaction of taking a check for a tax payment or a trash payment, or taking somebody's voter registration card, that kind of quick thing, and just doing it right then and there. So that's something, unless there's objection, that's certainly something that I'm going to push. I wouldn't really want to force an employee to go and do that if they have concerns, health concerns, but it does seem as though in most offices there is at least one staff member is willing to do that. So certainly want to encourage that.
And I also feel that when we do decide to open and we do come up with guidelines, that I think Lincoln should have a department heads meeting and talk to all department heads to sit down and say exactly what they need to do or their employees need to do to maintain that their area is sanitized, after each customer. I mean, we can clean the building, full building at night with the sprayer that Todd usually does with the buildings. But that being said, my main concern, as I said, is the library and the senior center, where people either sit in front of a computer or read a book, and in the senior center where they sit around the table, whatever they do. After they leave, maybe we can get one of the seniors, on that project of getting a tax rebate, working so many hours in a year, get them to do that and maybe help clean. It's whatever they want, if they want to do that or not. But I think the department heads need to know exactly what the rules would be. And if they don't want to follow them, then they don't open. That's how I would look at it. We need to be safe. We need to keep people safe. The main objective. That's how I feel. My opinion. So, any further discussion on it? Yes, Brian.
Just a thought too on the 3 main buildings you're talking about, that maybe we could stagger them too. Maybe we could open up the town hall first and use it as a test to see how everything goes, and then you could do maybe the next week or 2 one of them, and then finally the other, just to make sure that we've got all the kinks out first before we just go full bore.
Yeah, not a bad idea. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, thank you very much. Next on it is the update on the fiscal year 21 snow removal budget.
Yeah,
How
so
much are we in the red?
So at the moment officially, and this is just an FYI for the board, at the moment officially, we received that correspondence it's in your packet from Superintendent Martin of $16,830.08 for comparison's sake. And as a reminder, there's $120,000 appropriated for snow and ice removal. So this is above and beyond that. What Ken, our town accountant, and I have as a placeholder is probably about $50,000. It obviously depends on how much more snow and ice we get this year, but that's probably a safe bet. The state law does allow the town administrator to, with the approval of the town administrator, the town can spend in the deficit, and then it'll be added on the tax rate in the fall. So this is more largely a FYI that we are above, but hopefully it's certainly being managed, and hopefully it won't end up being too far above the appropriated amount.
Yeah, most budget seasons, that's a common issue.
Yeah.
Unless we have a very non-snow week year, so.
Correct.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the 22 budget, fiscal year 22 budget. Where are we with it?
So, yeah, so, and it would actually be, I'd like to lay out to the board, particularly the timing and the process for what I'd recommend for the budget process. And it would be great if that process and timing makes sense to the board to get a vote to affirm it. And then I'll work towards, working through that budget, and obviously, in particular, receiving help from our town accountant and other staff, obviously, as we get there. So my intention, what I would suggest is that I know traditionally in the past, or at least for a year or two, there's been a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee to consider the budget. What I'd like to suggest is that we work, in particular, Ken and I, and also the department heads, work through creating a balanced budget and then presenting that budget to a joint meeting of the board and the Finance Committee on April 13th. And then moving forward from there, hopefully having one recommended budget from both the board and from the Finance Committee on town meeting floor. Obviously, we don't know for sure if we'll have town meeting on May 3rd, but hopefully we will. And so that would be my intention of presenting that balanced budget. If there are tweaks that need to be made, we can have some policy decisions for the board to make about, in particular, level, the level of free cash that might need to be used, or what positions may or may not be funded. But my intention would be to present that balanced budget to the two committees jointly on April 13th, if that timeline and process makes sense to the board.
Yeah. As far as using free cash, I would like to use free cash for one-time expenses.
Yep.
So like, capital needs or whatever, that way, and not for, reoccurring, as you well know. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, we can work with the Finance Committee and get and the department heads get a balanced budget and go from there and see exactly where we are. Sounds like a pretty good timeline. Anybody have any concerns?
Did Lincoln, did you want the board to vote, confirm that, or?
I mean, I think it would be helpful. I mean, if the board sort of, especially if this board's unanimously, that timeline makes sense, I think that would be helpful.
So what you're looking for is a vote for the timeline to complete the, at least the budget process, or at least a budget Article 2, so we can present it to the Finance Committee, have a joint meeting with the Finance Committee on April 13th.
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I will make that motion to allow Lincoln to go through the budget process to present a balanced budget in front of a joint meeting on April 13th with the Whitman Board of Selectmen and the Whitman FinCom.
Here, a second on that?
I'll second Randy's motion. And I think implied in that motion, if I heard Lincoln correctly, is that our goal is really to be able to present a budget that both the finance committee and the selectmen agree on.
Right,
It's the goal.
yes.
Whether we
And-
reach it or not, whether we reach it or not, we don't know, but that's the goal anyway. So
Well, yeah, and and I think Lincoln can
And that
work
should be-
with the finance
that's
committee
part
and
of the
meet with the chairman.
Right.
Huh? So, any further discussion?
yeah, I have something.
Okay, Colin.
And I received an email from a citizen um, who wanted to speak and make a public comment tonight about the budget. I told him that it was it's not available during the way we do sessions these days, but that I would read, if he were to write something to me, I'd read it to the board.
Go
So
right ahead.
I'd like to just read it to you. It's from Sean Kane, affectionately known by me as Citizen Kane, but it is affectionate. That is affectionate. And he says the following. I just wanted to read it into the record. The fiscal year 22 budget is complex, but I believe that we should do everything in our power to maintain services in our community. The difficulties associated with COVID-19 have placed an incredible burden on many of our departments. In addition, today, more than ever, many adults and many children depend on the services we provide. I know that extending the compromise on the regional agreement is a sore subject, but I'm asking you to respectfully reconsider that option. So basically what he's doing is asking us not to out of hand dismiss the idea of continuing the compromise. I believe that doing so will help the schools maintain level services. Risking critical mental health and education supports on a Hanson override doesn't feel right to me. And if we stay close to the Madden recommendations, a compromise will not take away from other town departments. I believe this option is for the common good and creates the least harm in Whitman during this time of need. Thank you for your time and consideration. And it's signed Sean Kane, 31 Forest Street.
Okay. Does anyone like to make a comment on that?
Yeah, I sympathize with Sean. However, it was pretty clear last year when we were able to get this compromise passed that it was basically based upon using the statutory method this year in both towns. I've told Sean that while I sympathize with him, and while I always sympathize with, I always am for funding the schools at as high a level as possible, that there might not be a lot of sentiment that goes along with that this particular year. If we're looking for a balanced budget without our doing an override ourselves, it might be difficult to do so. But I do believe that Sean's idea should be considered and thought about.
Anybody else? Randy, he had his hand up first. Randy,
Um,
gently, Randy, gently.
No, it will be gently because I do respect Sean and I know Sean, when he writes something, it's genuine and it does come from the heart. Unfortunately, I do not believe we are going to be in any position this year that we are going to be able to subsidize the school budget. I would say I would not vote for that this year, knowing that. Also knowing that, last year we were in a very difficult situation. The assessment issue stretched well into the budget cycle. Some drastic decisions were made that probably would have negatively hurt our kids. Recently in some town meetings, and I'm really, I do take issue with this, as this is being played off now for some that we gave Hanson money. I don't believe we gave Hanson money. I believe we gave our kids money. I believe we gave the parents of the kids an option that the school district wouldn't suffer, that we would make it through, that Whitman would overcome that challenge of the assessment issue the last budget cycle. And we did the best we could for the kids. Also letting Hanson know you had one more year to make arrangements to handle this. I know in the FinCom, their last meeting, they kind of took a basic straw poll on if there would be an appetite to support any further amendments. And I thought to myself, is it a little too early to do that? And I kind of came to the conclusion, no, probably not. You know, with the budget cycle coming, with the budget being presented tomorrow night at the school, maybe this board should also take a little straw poll tonight before the budget comes out of whether or not we'd be willing to venture down that road again. Just so there isn't any false hopes, that everyone knows where they stand. I don't know, just something to think about. And I don't know what the rest of the board thinks about that.
Okay, Justin.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I always appreciate Sean's comments. I overlapped with him in the finance committee for about a year, and I learned a ton from him. It was my first year getting involved in municipal government. But on this, Randy just said the school budget comes out tomorrow, so we don't even know what the projected deficit would be for either town. Lincoln is still working with the chair of the finance committee, the finance committee at large, and the town accountant to figure out how we close our budget deficit. It's looking at between 600,000 and 700,000, I think was the last thing I heard. So we're not quite there yet either. I just think it's premature to start throwing out hypothetical compromises when nobody has any numbers to work with.
Right, I agree. My comments is, we have some large hurdles that we'll be looking at this in the future, such as we'll be doing the main pipe for the DPW, the sewer line, the original sewer line that needs to be replaced will be, there'll be a large increase in the water sewer bills. We have a middle school that we're looking at possibly, building, and that's coming up. South Shore Tech is on the agenda. We have an issue with some of the issues with South Shore Tech as far as our building projects. I mean, that's it. That's the second oldest school, vocational school in Massachusetts. So we have 3 large projects that we may have to go out and borrow in the next 3 to 5 years. And I think this is for someone to think that we could try and squeeze by another year and help out Hanson. I'm sorry, I understand, but we also have a large mountain to climb in the next few years, and we just can't be subsidizing another town. And besides, the schools won't be losing it because it's we pay our portion, our full portion, and Hanson will pay their full portion. Schools will get what they need. It's just it's on the backs of both Whitman and Hanson together. That's my feeling. Yes, Brian.
I completely agree with what Randy said. And what Dan, you said about you missed one project who was a possible DPW.
Oh, right,
building
DPW building.
that's to add more to that stack.
Right. I'm sorry, yes.
And the thing that, in a perfect situation, in a utopia, so to speak, helping out your neighbor, I think is always a good thing. Whether it's with our citizens' tax money that we were voted to protect, I'm not sure. But what we have to realize is we sold that plan last year, telling them that we were going to go forward with statutory this year. So I don't think our credibility would be enhanced by changing the plan after we got what we want last year. So I think we need to stick to what we said we were going to do, and hope that Hanson can iron out their difficulties, and that we move forward with our budget, because down the road we're going to have a hard way to go down with this financial situations that we're going to be dealing with. So if you want to do that straw poll, I'm not in favor of helping out anymore.
You want to? How do you feel about it, Justin?
I still think it's early, but yeah, we had an overwhelming turnout voting to support a 1-year agreement. It would take something crazy to change the minds of 400 something voters. So yeah, not right now.
Yeah, Kyle.
Yeah, I have to agree that it's premature. And I have to agree that we convinced 421 people last year to go along with the compromise last year. So I don't have any problem with that. The only caution I would like to make, and Brian made me think of it when he talked about our duty to the taxpayers, which we do have. But our taxpayers have a duty to the services that they want provided too. And our taxpayers have said in a survey that they like what the DPW does, that they like what our police do, they like what our fire do, they like having good schools. They also have to pay for it at some point. So I just don't want to, I want to remind people that somewhere along the line during the next couple of years, we're going to probably have to uh, get behind an operational override that'll get us where we want to be.
Yeah.
We can't lose sight of the fact that that's probably going to be necessary at some point.
Okay. Randy?
Completely, Carl makes a great point that, we were, I think with some good budget tightening, last year, taking some recommendations, applying them, we were able, I mean, John Madden, although recently that report is kind of getting slightly convoluted, and this is to touch on something that Sean's talking about. He was saying, we talk about this 2.5%. It was up, you shouldn't see growth up to 2.5%. Not that it had to be at 2.5%, up to 5%, not exceeding those to produce sustainability. I think we've done a pretty good job, and I think we've seen the benefits that we probably will be able to provide a very good budget this year, maintain services, handle some capital projects without an override. That's a pretty good year. I don't like this talk, well, if people don't get exactly what they want, we should do an override. It shouldn't play out like a Doritos commercial, and I've said this before, crunch all you want, we'll make more. It's live within your budget constraints. And I think we did a pretty good job, which may be why we're able to get through another tremendously difficult year in this COVID pandemic without having to face that override, like Hanson is going to probably need to see. So again, but it's coming down the pipe. We know that. And that's another reason why I say, it's not to do an override for another community. I'm sorry. If we're going to do an override, it needs to benefit our own students. We need to see growth in the school district actually coming from our citizens' money, not helping out the partner community.
Okay. And I feel the same, that this is, we made a promise to our taxpayers what we were going to do. And they said, okay, for that 1 year. And I agree with everybody. So I guess, Lincoln, you know exactly how the board feels. So I assume that in the budget meeting, if that comes up, you know where we stand.
Very clear. Thank you. Thank you very much for the clear direction. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda, non-mandated busing. Okay, where are we going with this? Just Lincoln.
So I know, I know Selectman Lementina wanted to add this to the agenda. This has been a subject of a conversation and has been on the Finance Committee's agenda for several weeks, every week that I've been here so far anyway. And there was an informational meeting that Superintendent Simonak put on this afternoon that a few members of the board attended, several members of the regional school district attended, and several members of the Whitman Finance Committee attended, which I think was very informative. I think just to lay out the conversation points, it's clear to me within the law and looking at the agreement and looking at the state law, et cetera, and the regional school district agreement, is that the Finance Committee's decision on this subject is really whether or not to recommend that budget appropriation, that supplemental appropriation for the school district for non-mandated busing or not to town meeting. And then it's town meeting's decision about whether it is funded or not. But ultimately the policy decisions about exactly how the busing is conducted is up to the policymaking board of the town, the Board of Selectmen, you, and obviously, in some respect with the regional school district, since they're obviously a policymaking board as well. But that's sort of the extent of the issue, I think, is from my perspective. But I don't know, if there's some other flavor that members of the board would like to talk about, and obviously happy to look into any issue that's desired and get information if any member of the board wants more clarifying information.
Okay, Randy?
Yeah, I'll thank you, Lincoln. I would just ask if possible, could you scan the document that was given out this evening and just make sure that the other board members who weren't there.
Will do. Thank you.
What I will say, why I asked for it to, I guess, hit our agenda is, we're getting to the point now where, again, as we spoke earlier, we're starting to hit that corner where we're going to be seeing some changes. If anyone was listening to the governor today, there's some talk of, he wants to see kids back in school April 1st. You're starting to see a lot of changes on the school end where, they're obviously being thrust into motion and have a tremendous amount of things to deal with. Again, this has come up on numerous FinCom agendas. And what I wrestle with is the policy aspect argument that's going on there with the implementation of paid bus programs, which would fall under us. Are we going to do that? Or strictly, are we going to recommend or not recommend the line, which absolutely, as we all agree, is in their purview. I just think it would be helpful for the school district and Jeff and George. Is it this board's will, let's find, be able to have Lincoln call Jeff tomorrow and at least provide some direction for Jeff and his board. Is it the Board of Selectmen's will to change a long-standing policy of providing the recommendation at town meeting to provide non-mandated transportation for the town to vote on? I'm sure there's everyone has several reasons why, but I think we can all agree that a number one reason is safety for our kids. We're providing a service, a service that gets kids to school, and a safe manner where we don't have kids, third, fourth, fifth grade out there in inclement weather crossing busy roads. And it's a service and a policy that town meeting has always supported. So I think it would be probably a proper time so we can get away from the spinning wheels and a lot of misnomers out there that we're all of us going to start charging parents for transportation this year. So I personally would just like to have a vote of, is this a policy that we're going to attempt to bring something different to town meeting this year?
My question on it is, does the finance committee want to zero out that line item to be able to balance the budget? Or do they feel that it's unnecessary to have it? That's the question I would put it to him. And taxpayers of Whitman have already told us over the years, when I was on the finance committee, over the years, they want non-mandated busing. They want busing for their children that live within 1.5 miles and not the 2 miles. So it's an extra 0.5 mile that they're getting. They want it. I think this is not the way to balance a budget by eliminating that one part. I mean, that's the case. Why not eliminate crossing guards? Let the kids take a chance. They can push a button and hope that they'll cross in the red and yellow light. No, you need to have somebody there to make sure that it happens, right? So that being said, it's the taxpayers said they want non-mandated busing. They're willing to pay for it for the safety of the kids getting to school. And I can remember when it was 2 miles and it was the school committee way back, oh God, in the 80s, I believe, maybe, who decided, maybe before that, decided that they wanted to go not 2 miles, but 1.5 miles, and the town will pay for that extra 0.5 mile. that they didn't want kids walking to school 2 miles to school. I know that some people are concerned that you have a bus going into the schools that's half full or half empty, how you want to look at it. But the fact is, these people, are they looking at the bus that are half empty halfway through the route? They haven't picked up the kids already? Or these are the ones that the parents that are living next to the school and that's what they see? I thoroughly believe that they may be able to discuss with the bus company certain ways of solving that issue. But as far as eliminating it totally, I'm against that. Brian.
I'm not for getting rid of non-mandated busing. And it's, for me, a question of safety. I don't know about you gentlemen, but I certainly would not be able to go to sleep at night and live with myself if I cut that money out and somebody got injured or, God forbid, killed. It's just unacceptable. We're here to make a safe environment for our community, our children, and I think, Randy, you might even know how much the savings would be, and I don't believe it's a heck of a lot. And I don't know if you get that figure, but go ahead.
I believe they said tonight, if we were to eliminate it, it would be a savings of about $64,000.
Right. You know,
Am I right?
one
Jeff?
child getting hurt for that kind of money, I mean, that's an absolute disgrace to even consider that. For me, it's a no-brainer. We have to have some conscience here, and we have to realize it isn't always about money. It's about our kids. It's about safety. And today's world is a different place. You don't know what's around that corner. You know, Whitman has always been a very Norman Rockwell town, but read the newspapers, watch the news. Things are changing, and it's creeping into the suburbs all the time. And I just wouldn't feel right about us. You know, I'd love to see everybody bust. I know, like Hanson does it because they don't have sidewalks. But you know, I know we probably can't afford it, but certainly that would be a goal of mine to see everybody get on the bus and be safe. Rain, snow, ice. I know I've taken a few diggers in my driveway. I can imagine kids walking 2 miles to school. They probably recoup a lot quicker than me too, but I am not in favor of cutting that at all.
I mean, to be fair, sorry to cut you off, Justin. To be fair, a excellent packet which you got to get was given out, and there's some good information. And I also think tonight there was definitely some maybe some realization on the school district that there may be a better way to somewhat track this. But again, it's, you know, we need to look at what the pressing issue is. I think the pressing issue right now is obviously to get kids back to school as safely as possible. Not messing around with busing right now is one way to do that. Like with any business practice, yeah, of course, maybe we can have Lincoln, you know, set up a meeting somewhere down the road with Jeff and Karen again and see if there's anything on a town end we can provide just to make sure this is the most efficient way of doing it. Absolutely.
There you go.
But we know what the savings are. And like you said, Brian, a child gets hit, God forbid a child goes missing, that's pennies.
Right.
Not even comparable to life safety.
Yep. And you know, the one last point that I forgot to make about this is, even if some people would say, well, let's make it a pay as you go, so to speak, you know, charge the parents for that child's ride for that extra half. And I mean, really, I mean, we've got unemployment, we've got, you know, pandemic still going on, and people have been out of work for months. Now's not the time to be adding another bill to their problem. So I just think if the town can possibly do this, we owe it to them.
Kyle, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I did. I think it's clear from the discussion that the board doesn't want to change our approach to non-mandated busing ahead of time. that we would like to present the townspeople with the option of paying for it or not, like we have for a number of years. I agree with everything I've heard so far, and I'm really thankful to Dan for giving me a new saying, and that's, are you a bus half full or a bus half empty kind of person?
Right, yeah. I just looked up the last year's Article 2, and the cost of non-mandated busing to the town was a little over 400,000. And the cost of crossing guards was around 39,000. So I'm wondering if the finance committee is looking at non-mandated busing, zeroing out that line item is nothing but balancing out the budget. And it's the wrong way to do it. That's almost like saying, okay, you need to balance out your home budget. We're not buying food. You don't do that. Yes.
So yeah, I just want to echo it, basically second
Yeah.
everything everybody already said about safety. That really is the biggest reason why we do this.
Right,
But
right.
to give a brief summary of the excellent presentation that the superintendent and business administrator and the busing coordinator put on for us today, because there are 20 buses that serve the high school and 0 non-mandated students from Whitman at the high school, we wouldn't save any buses. So the reason that for a $400,000 non-mandated busing payment, the school would only save $64,000 in actual busing costs is because they need all 20 buses to still work at the school. So you're not saving any buses. You're just basically, a bus does 3 runs instead of 4.
Okay.
So it reduces shifts. It's not so the initial number that we see at town meeting, the $400,000 to pay for the per pupil rate to bus each of the
Right. Okay.
couple hundred kids that we have, is how it's calculated, but it's not necessarily the money that we would save.
Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is South Shore Tech debt issuance. On this issue, I've talked to Tom Hickey, and also Lincoln has also. What Tom is looking to do is we have a number of things that we have to get accomplished at South Shore Tech as far as capital issues go. And one of them is the Windows project, which costs $800,000, but we were able to save enough money in our capital stabilization fund through having out of district schools, saving that money to pay that $800,000 at no cost to the towns, to the 8 district towns. But there are other issues in the old 60s building. That's the second building section of South Shore Tech that was added to allow Whitman and Hanson students to come into South Shore Tech. That roof needs to be replaced. It's out of code electrical. There's a lot of issues with the old building, and we need to add some space. And I think he was looking at around $17 million project over time, but it's one project after another. The roof being the largest issue. And instead of going to 8, where we need to have all 8 district towns approve this, instead of going every other year for more money for capital, he was going to do one large amount and then get the projects done little at a time, knowing that the towns will okay it. And we would only charge the towns for the amount of money we borrow on that project. So it's almost like a one-time, okay, 17 million. And basically, I think the project was 18 million, but he can save $1 million in electrical work by using the students to do the electrical work. So, but that was Tom's understanding of reasoning why he wanted to do it this way, is to get a feeling of how the towns felt so he can start the projects and get them started. And of course, as I say, the 8 districts wouldn't feel the cost of it until I think 2023, 2024, when we start doing borrowing for the projects. Now, Lincoln, did you talk to?
Yeah, I did. So I just to add a little bit more color to this. So there is the Massachusetts School Building Authority has recently, within the last few years, had put in place an accelerated roof repair program. And that accelerated roof repair program allows school districts to, as the name says, on an accelerated basis, try to get in particular roof projects done. There are other accelerated projects. The one that would be relevant in this case would be accelerated roof program. In conversation with Dan and with Dr. Hickey from the South Shore Votech School, they're in the position in that because the school has been so well kept up over the years, that while the roof needs to be replaced in the upcoming years, that while they have applied to the school building authority for funding several times, that because the condition is not as bad as other schools, that that they're really not going to be in a position to receive funding from the school building authority in the near term. So on the one hand, you'd certainly hope to receive some state funding for these kinds of projects. From what Superintendent Hickey is saying, that just doesn't seem likely in the near term, and that they do believe that they need to do these projects. I know the school roof project in particular was estimated at about $5 million of the now $17 million. And just for one other piece of context, my understanding of how it works is that the debt is laid out proportionally across the member towns based on enrollment in the 3 years prior to when the debt was authorized. So just for context, this would, if this passed this year, it would be based on fiscal year 2021, 20, and 19. But just for context, because the enrollment doesn't change that much over the years, the percentage for fiscal years 18, 19, and 20 is for Whitman is 24.75%, because that is our percent of the enrollment of the total school. So we're number 2 after Rockland as far as, so we would have a pretty decent chunk of that. And I think that's one reason that I wanted the board to hear about this issue, to be aware of it. It would be, while the projects need to happen, because of the size of our enrollment at the school, the town of Whitman's portion of that debt would not be insignificant, but nevertheless, it seems to be needed. So I just wanted the board to hear the issue a little bit more and be aware of it, and have an opportunity to have questions on it.
Right, and that roof is from 1962, was built in 62. Yes, Randy.
Is there any, has Dr. Hickey is there any documents in place or presentation for this? Because I have heard bits and pieces that it's 17 million, they'll do it in phases. But it's phases according to, is it the school committee, the VOTEC school committee that will basically authorize the time frame? And do we have a time frame? Because all
right. It's good that you said that. I asked Tom at our last meeting, to put together, because he explains it very well, to put together a video explaining it, get that out, and we could probably play it at town meeting to explain it. I said if he could also put it on South Shore Votech's website.
Yeah,
that way you can watch it.
I mean, if this is something to be done over like a 5-year period, like we hypothetically could all of a sudden see, probably somewhere around 350,000 more dollars needed to pay this debt, and
right.
Yes. So right. Like Lincoln said, it's not insignificant, and definitely something that, again, we're going to have to plan for it, especially if we don't know how fast that project moves.
Exactly right. And, you've got to start to think, the part of the building that we're looking to repair is the 1962, and that's the newest part of the building. We've already repaired the roof of the original building. That being said, I said to Tom, Dr. Hickey, I said, maybe we need to start letting things go so it looks so bad. And he says he will not do that. He says that building will be kept up as best we can. And if it zeroes us out from getting aid from the state, so be it. But he's not going to put anyone in danger. So, any questions? Further questions? No, seeing none. Okay. Under new business, act on the request of David. How would you pronounce that last name? Asap?
AZF.
ASAP, whatever, to be
AZF.
reappointed to the position of constable for a 3-year term through February 28th, 2024. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion on it? Okay, seeing none. We'll go with it. Justin,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
and I'll vote. And Laurie wanted to remind you after the vote that we need to get in and sign the appointment card that's on the desk. Act on policy number 1-01, use of force, response, and resistance by sworn personnel. Do I see this? All right, this is from the police department, right? If I'm corrected?
Yeah.
John, Lincoln,
Correct. This is the,
policy that was sent to us, yes.
that's correct. And I think you just want to take a vote in the public session just to affirm your previous vote in executive session.
Right, and this was looked over by our town attorneys and they agree with it and they have no issues with it. That being said, I'd like a motion to accept that.
So moved. Move to affirm our vote.
No, move to affirm, thank you. Any
Second.
second?
Second.
Randy, thank you. Any further discussion? Justin,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Announce a vote to accept Whitman Fire Rescue COVID vaccination agreement between the town of Whitman and Local 1769. This is another issue that we talked about in executive session, I believe, right? And we need to affirm that vote.
Yes, please.
All right, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Or a second?
Second.
Thank you, Randy. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Justin,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Announce that they are two members of the planning, we have two members of the planning board vacancies open. We have Eric Pretorius and Sheila Salvucci, my daughter-in-law, who are moving out of the town of Whitman. So they actually, tonight is Sheila's last night. They have a planning board meeting right now, but they cannot, after today, there'll be two vacancies open and they cannot be on the planning board. So I'd like to announce that we have two vacancies, and anyone interested, it would be nice if they had some degrees or knowledge of planning and carpentry and something, because it's a very important board for the building of the town. And set March meeting scheduled. We're looking at what, March 9th and 23rd, Lincoln?
That's what I'd suggest. And just quickly, I would like to, just as a little preview, I do think it would be important with the board's approval for there to be a discussion of the sewer force main project. And there are presently, there's been a kind of a change. There were a few options before. Those options have changed a little bit from the work of Environmental Partners, who is working with the town on this project and working with the DPW on this project. And what I'd suggest to the board, as far as which of the three options are placed on the warrant, that is the board's prerogative, since the Board of Selectmen are the owners, so to speak, of the warrant.
Right.
So what I would suggest is that at one of these meetings, probably March 9th, if the schedules work with the DPW commissioners and Environmental Partners and and Dennis is to have the board hear the different options, hear the funding, and consider which of the options they'd like to be on the warrant. And the other piece is that I learned from Dennis that there is some desire to have on this town meeting warrant an article for a new DPW building. I think I would say that the feasibility study is still outstanding on that. There is not a completed feasibility study. My thought is that it's a little premature at this town meeting, as much as I know that that building is in tough shape. But I just, that just as a conversation point, if the board, would intend to include that on the warrant, that's certainly something that I would also want the board to hear a presentation about and in March. And so that the word gets out about what that project looks like, if in fact that's going to be on town meeting in May, possibly. So,
Okay, Justin, was there anything in the building committee to discuss about that?
It's been a while since they've discussed the DPW building. I haven't seen any results. Yeah, feasibility study. I don't think it's complete yet. So.
Okay. All right, so it looks like the 9th and the 23rd. Okay, now I need a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law 30A 21A 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, the chair so declares. And we're gonna, and it's gonna be on the strategy. And we're gonna have that meeting in accordance with Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 30A, Section 20. The executive session portion of this meeting will be held in an online conference mode hosted on zoom.com, and members of the public will not be able to attend. No broadcasts of executive session will be made. We will be adjourning executive session and open session in this meeting. So we'll be staying on the same link. I guess, Justin, you're going to take over once we're off the air.
Yep.
All right, so do I hear a motion?
So moved.
There is a second.
Second,
Thank you. Justin,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Randy,
yes.
and I vote yes. So we'll see you in executive session.